Well, good afternoon.
Oh, just finishing my lunch.
Oh, you're fine. I'm waiting for there she is, my cohort in crime, to let all these people in because everybody's flooding in at once.
Okay, hang on a sec. Oh, yes, I signed in as you because I didn't see you before. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and admit everybody, and I'm going to change my name so that people know it's not you and it's me.
There you go.
Okay.
Hi,
Yay. Oh,
Welcome.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Hello, Forrest Gander.
Hi, Marilyn.
So
Thanks for
good to see
having
you.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to see you.
it's exciting.
I wish it was, I
Judy,
wish we
I'll do
were
it.
together, but yeah,
I know. We all do, I think.
another time.
Yeah.
Here we go.
We want to be where Sean is right now. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
We could all be where Sean is, but that would be distracting.
yeah.
Well, you've been to Spain, and I've never been to Spain, but I've heard nothing but fantastic things about it, Forrest. So
Yeah, it's a blast.
Email address?
Yeah. Okay.
So we've all had a pretty jam-packed weekend, huh? With the news and
Boy,
Oh
but
my gosh.
I feel so
Holy
much
moly.
better. Yeah.
yeah.
Breathe.
Yay. But I mean, all that waiting 5 days. Oh my God.
It was painful.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I thought there'd be more Trump histrionics about now, but looks like
Yeah.
he's fading out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to say, isn't it? At least the pundits are still talking about him crazy. I just think, oh, stop it. We got to move on here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm ready to move on. Yeah.
Mhm.
And part of our talk today will probably be about, in a sense of sort of moving on ecologically anyway. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to your talk. We haven't had this kind of a mix of ecological anyway, so I'm looking forward to it. Thinking
Well, I hope it's our talk, Marilyn.
ours.
Yeah.
Conversation, you're right. That is part of the deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like
Forrest,
that.
where are you coming to us from?
From Petaluma.
You're in Petaluma? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I've been living in Petaluma for a couple of years now, and
Wow.
I could never go back to the East Coast again and be very happy. Yeah.
I love it here. It's a quaint town, and it's my new home for 25 years.
25 years. You can own it now, Sean, if it's been 25 years.
Yeah, it counts.
Where are you,
I'm a
Sean?
Sonoman too.
Where do you live here?
Over on the east side, directly across from Leghorns Park.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, that's great. Well, yeah. We have to fall together sometime.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Go grab a cup of coffee.
We have no shortage of good places to go for coffee too.
No.
Yeah.
So Judy, you're in Sonoma though, right?
I'm in Sonoma, but I worked in Petaluma for a couple of years, and
They're not far apart.
they're not far. No, it's a half an hour.
Yeah.
I feel like it's in my backyard. So
I like that Sonoma Art Center, Judy. Do you do anything there?
actually, so the community center.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have taught classes there. I take classes there. My friend Eric Jackson is now in charge of the fiber arts and fun stuff. And I met him through Transcendence Theater Company. So it was kind of a nice shift when he went over there. So it's added a lot of energy.
Are you doing fiber arts, theater, and poetry?
Oh, as much as I possibly can. I try to do everything, but there's a limit, there's a limit to how much I can do. But I sure do want to get back. I had just decided I was going to go back to my choir right when lockdown happened. And they're meeting virtually, but I tried it and it didn't quite work for me.
Huh. So you all be interested in this. You're bringing up the choir, Judy, reminds me that there's a fantastic literary critic who's moved to this area. She's focused on sort of adventurous, she's a feminist literary critic who's focused on kind of adventurous women writers. You know, Judy?
Carla King is a friend. Yes, she told me she was moving and she moved to Kenwood.
Oh,
So
I'm thinking of another one. I'm thinking
who?
and suddenly she's like my closest friend and I've forgotten her name. I get nervous on these things.
Hey, don't we all? It's like suddenly you're front and center.
Her name is Lynn Keller.
Lynn Keller. Okay.
Lynn Keller, Lynnkeller. Her latest book is sort of on poetry and the Anthropocene.
Oh, well, we would certainly like to, invite
She's someone you'd want to engage with. She's really terrific, and she's living out in Sebastopol now.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's part of our bigger
Yeah.
community for sure.
We have actually a really big contingent, not just Santa Rosa, but Sebastopol is the second, I think, biggest grouping of people.
And the first biggest grouping is
Santa Rosa.
really necessary after we're adults and out of school and writing anything, not novels, stories, poems, can be such an alienated, lonely experience. And to have a group that gathers critique and that you hear things from about your work. Everybody's not going to be useful to you, but some people can be. And I think that's a really necessary thing. And the friends of mine who are really talented, who in their adult years just waited to be discovered, they ended up stopping writing because Helen Vendler didn't discover them. And
no, we've had that experience with some of our really most prolific writers. They'll write a number of books and not have the success they hope. And it's so discouraging that they stop when in fact they're extremely talented writers. So a club like ours, because we have contests and anthologies and events and speakers like you, I think it keeps their juices going a bit more. And that's a really positive element because writing is lonely.
Yeah, I'm with you, Roger. It's a really good thing. Hey, where are you, Roger? It looks like you're in a bar.
No, this is my office. Those are my paintings on the wall.
Ah, you set up your office like a bar with that. There's a counter on your right, and yeah.
No, that's just a wooden wall, but I can't be on the other side because the nudes are on that side, and I was afraid I'd offend people.
Oh dear.
His house is like an art gallery.
Yeah, it is like an art gallery. Yeah, your home is like an art gallery.
Yours is too. Yours is as well. Very, very beautiful stuff.
It is.
Everywhere. Is Pam on the call yet? Pamela Heck?
I haven't seen her.
I haven't seen her name.
I'm right here.
Oh,
Oh,
no, there you are.
oh, Pamela Singer.
Glasses.
Yeah, and
I'm right here.
Yeah.
Tommy's there, Tommy Whitener.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Oh, we've got,
I'm here.
yeah.
Not employed, but here.
Pam, wave your hand. I don't see you yet.
Yeah, I'm not seeing her.
I heard her, but
I'm right here. Here I am. Can you see me?
Oh, we were looking for Pamela Heck. We were looking for another Pamela.
Oh, okay.
But we're glad to see you
We are
too.
happy to see you.
You.
We're excited to see you.
Thank you.
I see there's a Jen Dunlap is on without her photo, but if she's not a member, she's maybe someone that you want to invite to a talented writer who's been focusing on poetry lately and lives in St. Helena. How do people come to be members?
Hey, money.
Roger?
well, they often through a friend, through a member, attend a meeting. The other thing is that because we're, this is the oldest writers club in California. is California Writers Club. And we have membership all over the state. This is the largest branch. And I think because of efforts of the past presidents like Linda Reed and Robbie Summers Bryan and Sandy Baker, they really spread the word from a small gathering at a bar or a restaurant to, you know, kind of major monthly event with 100 people attending the speaker. And that probably has improved the word. The other thing is that we have about 25 what are called dual members. That means they live somewhere other than Sonoma, but they want to be in our club too.
Yeah.
And they get a bargain. It's very inexpensive, but that means they can publish in all the things we do, which the other branches don't.
Yeah.
So there's some advantage for writers, clearly, we think, but you know, don't you think it's word of mouth, Sean? And I mean, if you have as many members as we do, we're talking about writing to other friends all the time. We also have a booth at this county fair for all 11 days. And that's really spread our name the last couple of years.
What county fair, Roger? I'm still
At
learning.
the Sonoma County Fair.
Sonoma County in Santa Rosa.
Uh-huh.
Although, of course, we didn't have it this year because of COVID, but that's true with almost everything. Yeah.
And the nice thing is we're in that gallery that is the crafts building with the art and poetry and then crafts on the other side. And it's also where the only restrooms are. So it's a very popular spot. But
Strategic. That was strategic.
Yeah.
I mean, the nice thing is we sell our books there and our authors can all sell their books. But we must talk to 200 to 400 people a day.
Yeah.
Wow.
We also keep a booth at the San Francisco Writers Conference, which
But
is
yeah, that booth is the
ginormous.
larger clubs. That's the CWC booth. So
Right.
we're at the Writers Conference and we're also at the Berkeley Book
Right.
Fair.
The book fair, yeah.
There's huge.
So, and
Pandemic, it's ginormous.
our authors often are participating in other local fairs individually.
Mhm.
And we've also had in the past, we had monthly library events.
Yeah.
So, you know, over the last 10 years, we've had efforts to really make ourselves known in all kinds of ways.
What was the library thing, Roger?
Well, we had, you know, like a speakers event where readings at libraries.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
now in July, we didn't this year again, but in July we have 4 nights where we do readings in Copperfields. And we also have produced plays at 6th Street Playhouse
That's
and
great.
plays at Off the Page Readers Theaters.
That's great. That's
So
just
we
great.
have really
Yeah.
tried to, in any way we can, spread the word.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're also, Roger, we're also going to be having poetry readings at the Sebastopol Center for the Arts starting in January. Draw from the 2 groups we have now that are currently meeting weekly on Zoom. We have at least 12 members in each of those 2 groups. And there's another group that has recently gotten together. I don't know them, they're in Santa Rosa, but they're also reading at the Sebastopol Center for the Arts. And also there's going to be, you remember Reverberations, the big gallery show we had 2 years ago, where we started with the paintings and then we wrote poems to the paintings. That was all at the
Right.
gallery. This year, it's going to be the reverse. We're going to have the poets submit a poem, and then we're going to give those poems to the artists. And
Is
they're
that
going
at
to do
the
something with
Sonoma
it.
Community, the Sonoma Art Center, Community Center?
Yeah, this is at the Sebastopol Center for the Arts.
Sebastopol.
Sebastopol.
Ah, that's great.
Attended
It's
one
really
of
going to be
them.
fun.
Mendocino chapter did one called Ecphrasia, where they did the same thing. They did artists with writers and they paired them up, and it was so beautiful. And they put the whole thing online, where they paired the art piece and the writer's piece together.
Yeah.
You know, where they had either a sculpture, a painting, or whatever piece of art, and the writer would write about it, and the artist would, you know, put something up there for the writer to write to. It was just so moving.
I really love those collaborations.
And
Yeah.
then in the library, we do something called Art Embraces Words at the Mount Diablo branch, where the artist in non-pandemic world goes and puts all around the room their art, maybe 3 different artists, and the readers go inside and read their work, maybe 5 to 10, depending on, you know, their length of time, usually maybe 7. But now on Zoom, they do the same thing. And the artists present their work on Zoom and the readers read their work on Zoom. And you can watch it on YouTube, actually. They preserve it on YouTube. It's beautiful.
Good spirit. Yeah.
By the way, do you remember Austin Stewart?
Of course. Yeah.
Well, his father is here. I'm his stepmother.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. We gave him a last minute notice you were here, hoping he'd show up. But
Amazing. Where does he live now?
he's in Hilo, Hawaii with his son and daughter and wife, and they're lovely. Oh, I'm sure he'll be disappointed if he didn't get this late.
Austin's,
but,
he hasn't stayed in very close touch, but he's been one of the most brilliant students I ever worked with.
I'm sure he's they're the most brilliant parents on that island. These kids are amazing.
Anyway, Linda, I want to interrupt just because we're at 10 after now. I love the conversation. It's nice, it's exciting, and I think it's fantastic. This is kind of a whole different dynamic. It's taken some time to get used to. Nothing will ever replace face-to-face communications. I'm a hugger. I miss being able to hug people I like and enjoy being around. So the one thing that I just noticed that happened with this meeting, unlike some others, is there's a calmness to it. And I don't know if it's our current climate, if you will, without getting political, but I think that there's a collective sigh of relief across the country, especially in California. So we're going to leave it at that. I can't cross the lines and say what I really want to say, which is that. So in any event, we're gonna get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Sean Langwell. I am the president of Redwood Writers, California Writers Club. We are now over 220 plus strong. Roger will give the exact number later. We have, in the past couple months, we have had some folks who are members read prior to our featured speaker, but we don't have one today because I don't want to take away from Forrest having as much time as possible to do what he needs to do. So I'm going to pass it over to our speakers chair, Marilyn Lanier, to introduce Forrest, and let's get the meeting started.
Okay, well, Forrest, welcome. We're so honored and so pleased you're really here with us. So it was over a year ago, I was just reflecting this morning, in fall of 2019, which seems like many years ago because of COVID, that I first contacted your agent at Blue Flower Arts and asking about the possibility of your giving a featured presentation for our writers, for Redwood Writers. And fortunately, she checked with you and you said yes. So we've been working our way towards this day for a long time. Our former president, Linda Reed, had urged me to invite you after learning about your having won the 2019 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in April of 2019, and that you are from Petaluma. And I was eager to see whether you're still in Petaluma. So that's really nice that you are here in Sonoma County. So since then, I've learned that the Pulitzer is but one of many of your notable literary accomplishments. And I thought I'll try to summarize just a few of those. In addition to your being a renowned poet, you're also a writer, translator, and editor of several anthologies of writing from Spain and Mexico. Others have celebrated your works for the richness of language and your undaunted lyric passion. I love some of these phrasing. You're the author of more than a dozen books, including collaborations with notable artists and photographers. So I've really gone through your website, and it's really one of the most fascinating websites I've seen, honestly. Your collection, Be With, won the 2019 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry and was long listed for the 2018 National Book Award. The Pulitzer Prize judges' citation calls it, the book that is, a collection of elegies that grapple with sudden loss and the difficulties of expressing grief and yearning for the departed. So your essays have appeared in, among others, I'm sure, The Nation, the Boston Review, and the New York Times Book Review. You're the recipient of fellowships from the Library of Congress, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Guggenheim, Howard, United States Artists, and Whiting Foundation, excuse me. So your presentation today is entitled, and you gave it this wonderful title, Twice Alive, Lichen and Language. You ask, do we live twice? In what sense can we merge with others? How might lichen expand our thinking about human intimacies? It's a poetry reading and conversation, as you mentioned today, around the language of science and poetry in a time of ecological trauma. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Marilyn. I think that's the first time I've had an introduction where it was like really directed to me, like you are.
Oh,
That's really sweet. Thank you very much.
Oh, good. I hope it's okay for you.
Yeah, and thanks for going so deeply into those different things. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about what I'm excited about these days, and see if I can make it contagious, and that you might catch it too. I imagine a lot of you in California already have caught it. We all know that we're living in a time of intense ecological crisis, and despite that we've had a president that denies that global warming is related to human activity, all of our scientists, and I have a degree in geology, agree that that climate change is very directly related to human activity, and so I think all of us in this conversation are familiar with the things that are happening, the acidifying oceans, and the shift of species northward, because the temperatures are changing, and the velocity that these things are happening now are kind of unprecedented, certainly in human time. And part of what I want to talk about is how I think it's, oh, I became really big and I lost sight of you. There, I got you back. What was I saying?
Ecological crisis.
Yeah.
Ecological crisis. I lost track of myself. So deep time is, the pace of this, and that geology gave me a sense of the sort of long-term time, the time that the Earth takes to manifest changes. And unless I think we begin to accept a longer scale of time and not just a very short-term human time, we're going to doom our species, and we've already doomed many other species. There are a lot of scientists now who say it's too late to recover the oceans, that they won't come back. And I talked to Gary Snyder. He said, it doesn't really matter. The Earth is going to do very well without us. It will recover. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Forrest, we accidentally muted everybody. Could you unmute yourself?
Oh.
There you go.
I just said the most interesting things. You've all missed it there.
I
The
did.
rest is boring.
Say them again.
Repeat.
So I think that a lot of writers, am I on now?
Yes, you're on.
Judy, you're making signals. Is that to me? No.
I'm sorry. I'm going to mute everybody. Give me a second and then unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, a lot of us most of us are living here in California, this incredible landscape that I was dying to get back to. I went to San Francisco State in 1980, 81. And I was born in California in the Mojave Desert. I've been wanting to get back here forever. And I love this landscape. And I love the biodiversity. And I really would like it to be preserved for my grandchildren. I'd like there to be things around. And writers, there's no cause for writers to necessarily write ecologically. We always need funny poems. We need silliness in our lives. That's part of human sensibility. But I think for a lot of us, there is a felt need to address what is, the ecological crisis of our time, one of the biggest crises that humanity is involved in, and not to simply be quiet about it. So the interesting thing about what's come to be called eco-poetics is that unlike every other literary movement or artistic movement that you can name, most of which, like if we imagine any of them, surrealism or Dadaism or futurism, they started in one particular, usually an urban center, usually Paris, right? And was started by almost always a group of men, and then gradually spread out. But eco-poetics, unlike any other art movement, seem to develop all at once, internationally, just within the last 20 years. And some of the most significant and influential writers from the very start were women. People like Inger Christensen in Denmark, people like Coral Bracho in Mexico, people like in Poland and France. A lot of the major writers from the start have been women. So it's an unprecedented kind of movement. And it's different from just nature poetry. There's been a tradition in most cultures of a kind of nature poetry where the human enters a landscape, is struck by that landscape, comes back and writes a poem about it. But in a way that kind of objectifies the landscape. It keeps us very separate from it. The idea of eco-poetics was that maybe we could write in a way, what if we could write in a way where human identity really kind of merged, where subjectivity and the landscape and the world were more entangled, so that our feeling of our language and our human experience was more integrated with the world, which we know that it is. All of the recent science has been about entanglement, how there's no such thing as a single tree, that the mycelium connects everything below the soil of the forest, that that even us, even human beings, we have our DNA carries the DNA of parasites that long ago became part of our DNA, our core DNA. Not to mention that all of us here have swarms of animals living under our armpits and in our guts, and that we depend upon in a relationship, in a synergistic relationship, to help digest our food and to help. Well, I don't know what the mites on our bodies actually help with, but they're part of us also. That again, there's no such thing as a singularity. We're all connected. And if we begin to take that seriously, then we realize we're connected to all these species that we're wiping out for short-term sort of, our short-term greed and a more easily comfortable lifestyle. I think we're going to have to address this. Not all of us, but that some of us will feel a need to address this. So lichen is particularly interesting to me. I first became interested in lichen because of another California poet, Brenda Hillman. This is her most recent book, which is Extra Hidden Life Among the Days. She lives in Berkeley and has lived there for a long time. And she was writing about lichen, and I went on walks with her. She was the first person who had a little special lichen lens that she would go over to rocks and look at. I didn't know what I was looking at with her, but I was pretty fascinated. And then this wonderful literary critic who I just mentioned, Lynn Keller, who's moved to Sebastopol, was teaching at Wisconsin. And she invited me to be part of a group with some scientists, with some biologists. In fact, the biologist who writes most frequently for the New York Times about fungi and lichen. And her name is Anne Pringle. And I was the poet, there was an artist, there was Lynn Keller, a critic, and there were a big group of biologists interested studying lichen and fungus. And we went to this incredible wilderness area near Lake Huron that I'm not supposed to tell anybody about.
No.
And you can't get in except with permission. It's a very interesting setup. It still is owned by a group of like 50 families, very wealthy, who bought it in the middle of the 19th century because they were afraid the forests in America would disappear and they wanted a place for their game hunting. But they happened to ask one of the great early ecologists, whose name I'm forgetting. You remember? It's like Aldo Leopard. I'll get it in a minute. They asked him to sort of tell them how to take care of this land so that it would last a long time while the rest of the forests were cut down. He did. They followed his prescription, and it's one of the most pristine natural areas in the United States now, and it's opened up for scientific research. So I was there, and I got more into lichen and mushrooms. And this is the fascinating thing about lichen, is that, well, here, I can read this to you. So what most of us learned in high school about lichen, that it's an indicator species for pollution, is true. And litmus, in fact, is derived from lichens. And we learned that it's the synergistic alliance of a fungus and an algae or a cyanobacteria. And that's largely true too, but it's simplified. Because with lichen, the two things that come together, the fungus and the algae, give up what they were before. They change completely. They become something else when they merge, and something else permanently. They can't go back. They form this thing that some scientists say is more like an animal than a plant. And they form a collaborative being. And that collaborative being, Anne Pringle says, may in fact make us need to rethink how we consider mortality, because it looks like it has a kind of relative immortality. It may never die, given enough moisture and light. It can reproduce seemingly forever, even without sexual reproduction. It can keep going. So the thought of two things that come together and in that intimacy become something else. Sorry, I get emotional about this. So, because it's like relationships, it's like our intimate relationships. We become something else in an intimate relationship with someone, and we're changed permanently. And in some ways, that intimacy allows something to happen, like love, that doesn't die, that lives past us. So it's seemed to me an inspiration for thinking about collaboration and human intimacy, and also the sort of holy, the holy submission of oneself to something else that can make you bigger and make something else bigger. And in as much as that, it seems like a model for how we might need to be in the world in a time of ecological crisis. What else do I want to say about that? Maybe I should shut up and read a couple poems. I've been writing, I have a book coming out in next year called Twice Alive. And it can, so in lichen, the species that come together, they had their own lives, they come alive again as something else. And of course, I'm interested in the spiritual dimension of that in relationships, not necessarily any kind of, I'm not a Christian, but I have a spiritual sensibility, and I, like a lot of poets, I think do, that makes me think that, that I don't know where things end. So the title sequence takes place in California and celebrates the California landscape. There's a narrative in it, but the narrative sort of reveals itself slowly. So first you're going to hear what I hope, and I'll be very interested, since no one's heard these poems, about your honest response, whether you feel alienated by the scientific language that I use. I'm interested because I have a degree in science, in geology, and I love that language. I'm interested in drawing language from everywhere to make poetry. And I think that's one of the things that poets are able to do for a culture, is to expand our vocabulary, expand the way we can articulate the nuances of our feelings, because I think we fall into habits of feelings, and certainly habits of language, that really reduce the possibilities and the nuances of those feelings. So here's the beginning of Twice Alive. Mycobiont, just beginning to enwrap photobiont, each to become something else, its own life and a contested mutuality. Twice alive, algal cells swaddled in clusters. You take a 3-lens jeweler's loop to inspect the holdfast of the umbilicate lichens, then the rock tripe lichens, then the irenic amanita mushroom, swarming with a kind of mite that has no anus, then the delicious chanterelles called trumpets of death. Supreme parsimony in drought lets lichen live on sporadic events of dew and fog, of velvety tomentum and the wet thallus. So scientific language, like, I think that's sexy. I crush oak moss between finger and thumb for its sweet perfume, persistent on your skin when I touch your throat, so slow to evaporate, the memory of seeing sunburst lichen on the sandstone cliff. Though crustose lichen relish decay, vagrant lichen go all hygroscopic, spores spurting out through walls, split at the invagination fronts. But if herbivores eat wolf lichen, they die. And if carnivores eat it, they die, writhing in pain. With the exception of mice, it is rarely possible to tell if lichen is dead or alive. The fuzz of fecal dust from lichenivorous mites triggers woodcutter's eczema, the bane of loggers, knee-deep in sweet fern, sawing down cedar. In the presence of water, photobionts go turgid. In hours of dark respiration, a spermatic green corn smell takes the shape of a lamellated mushroom. In cavitating symplasts, spores loosen into the elongation zone on a night of caterwauling loons. So evening finds us at this wood's edge where, at a dead oak's base, shoestring rot glimmers, its luminescent rhizomes reflected from the eyes of a foraging raccoon that doesn't yet sense us. Air, ghostly and damp, clings as we step from our woods to look across the field toward the first lane of lit houses, their dull pewter auras restrained by wet haze. Cordyceps, the brown of your eyes, softened with rain and remotely fluorescent, dissolve into slime after a few days. Whatever we thought we were following was following us, its intention unlinked to our own. So that's that poem continues in two other parts that develop a little more of the narrative of the I and the you. But I realize that it begins with a lot of language that that most people aren't going to recognize immediately. And I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, I also love poems with small vocabulary. You know, Robert Creeley, most of his poems rarely have words that are 3 syllables long, and I love his work. But there's something to be said for, well, I don't know if you know this this artist who said about art, when you see bad art, it's wow, huh? And when you see good art, it's huh, wow. And that huh moment is that moment where we're not quite comfortable at first, where we're a little in the dark. We don't immediately get it. But then the impact of that, in my experience, can be much more profound. And I'm interested in art taking me to a place where I don't have my immediately articulate response to what this is and how it should make me feel. In fact, the kind of writing that I distrust the most is the kind of writing that that we feel satisfied upon hearing the end of the poem, that, oh yes, that agrees with everything that I sort of agree with. And I can laugh at it because I'm really comfortable with it. I find a lot of Billy Collins a little bit like that, though I think he's quite a smart guy. And I think there are many different ways, of course, to approach poetry, but that unknown, I like to use that. I'd like to use that. And even when a word, we don't know the definition of it, it has a texture, and in its place in the sentence, we can often figure out sort of what it's doing. And I think that can be an exciting thing. So that, that poem, the way I'm approaching lichen and eco-poetry there is is by sort of focusing first on the lichen, on the non-human, and then moving gradually towards the human. If I read a poem from this lichen sequence in Brenda Hillman's new book, you'll see she does it in the opposite way. She drops lichen in to a human experience that's already a kind of palimpsest of different things entering and leaving, which is how our experience, of course, always is. This is day 20 in Brenda Hillman's book, this sequence. She says, day 20, the lining of the real is infinite, and that is where we live. And humans don't give up when dreams are momentarily sundered, like Gogol's overcoat, like hope, the cloth of that transforming everything. I mean, the lining of that dream. This morning, juncos with black wedges, black hoodies in the nervous dawn. Solstice approaches. The children arrive at the end of an awful year. Grandmothers peek at them in their beds. There, not so terrible now. There they are beside the winter dusk. Pale pink lights lift in the malls. Humans trying to make the living wage in their loved and unloved skins. Brown, black, pink, beige, white, marked, scarred, inked, pierced skins, buying objects from each other. Desert children doubt the winter holidays. My childhood Jesus lived inside a cactus, magic liquid streaming from his hands, the soul as causeless love. On winter hills, bands of scrubby, sunburst lichen, eating lignin in the mist, a beetle, the cells of its vision over gold. Its labor, not labor, if it doesn't think so. Nor Xanthoria, breaking things down. And here she has a picture of the Xanthoria lichen, breaking things down, fairly common on bark. If you peel a piece of it from history, the rest continues. So I have more to read, but I'd love to hear from, how do you want to work this, Sean? What's the best way to? I don't want to hog all the.
No, but I mean, we've got time. If you want to go ahead and jump into questions now, or if there's one more piece that you're itching to read, I think we could do that. But what I would be most appreciative of is how you come to take this wealth of knowledge that you've had from a scientific and geological perspective and mash it up with what you know from your own human experience to turn it into Pulitzer Prize winning poetry. I mean, it's just, you're right. The things that make you go, huh, even if you don't understand it, is phenomenal. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to read another poem, or we can go back to gallery view and have people chime in. And if you want to address the pseudo question I just asked you, that would be great too.
Yeah, sure. I will. Why don't, so maybe I'll read one more poem right now, a shorter poem. And if later you want me to read another poem, if there's time, I'll read another poem, part of this same sequence. This is different. This is out of the sequence that I'll read right now. Perfect. So I'll read this and address your question or comment, Sean. And then maybe we can have a little discussion, and maybe before the end, I could read one more poem or something. So this is called Forest with one R. Erogenous zones in oaks, slung with stoles of lace lichen, the sun's rays spilling through leaves in broken packets, a force, call it nighttime, thrusts mushrooms up from their lair of spawn, mycelial loam, the whiff of port. They pop into untrammeled air with a sort of gasp that follows a fine chess move. Like memories, are they, or punctuation? Was it something the earth said, to provoke our response, tasking us to recall an evolutionary course, our long ago initiation into the one among others. And within my newborn noticing, have you popped up beside me, love? Or were you here from the start, a swarm of meaning and decay, still gripping the underworld? Both of us, half buried, holding fast, if briefly, to a swelling vastness, while our coupling begins to register in the already awake compendium that offers to take us in. You take me in, and abundance floods us, floats us out. We fill each with the other. All morning breaks as birdsong over us, who rise to the surface so our faces might be sprung. And then, thank you. And then
Wonderful.
Sean, asking about how to incorporate all this language. Well, studying geology really trained me how to look at things, so that in geology, you have to be able at the same time to look at a large structure like the uplifting that causes a mountain, or a shear zone in that, and the fractured crystal rock in the shear zone. And then you have to also be able to look at it at the microscopic scale. What has happened to those crystals in the shear zone? How have they been penetrated by other things that came up in the magma? You're constantly tacking back and forth between sort of large scale and the very particular. And that came to serve me as a writer, I think, by wanting to incorporate both sort of the large, the galactic scale, our conceptual capacity as human beings, but also the particulars that make experience singular. So I wanted both in my work, and I felt like I needed to draw from every source to be able to do that. I think, you know, that like Judy with her fiber experience and art experience and writing experience, that we want to pull all of the things that we know into the art that we make. And I'm so disinterested in the, I think, well, I don't want to speak for everyone, but the genres that have held the art forms in little prisons for a really long time, I think are falling away. And you have someone like Anne Carson, who, like, her work is sort of poetry, but it's also sort of philosophy, and it's also sort of narrative. And, or in France, Edmond Jabez, his work is kind of philosophy. It's also sort of religion, but it's also poetry. And more fiction writers, or, you know, more and more books that I pick up that call themselves fiction are so informed by poetry that they could pass by that too. I think it's a great moment for us to do collaborations with other artists, but also to collaborate across the genres that we're interested in.
That's phenomenal. And I think, you know, you answered it well. Pulling upon our own experience and looking at things through a different lens is something I've tried to do for most of my life too. And sometimes that comes to hearing a different perspective like yours on something we see dangling from the tree, whether it's mistletoe or a tree-like cancer called lichen, and not knowing fully what that is. So I don't see any hands, but we have Fran or Les. Is there anything that you in particular?
Roger has his hand up.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah.
Roger, go ahead.
I was just going to react to the first poem, but I think one of the things that because of what you asked for us, I have a science background too. And immediately I wanted to look up some of those words. And the other thing was, as you read, I learned that, Mike didn't have an anus. I learned things that you were talking about that I knew nothing about through a poem. Now, I think that's a great experience. But the other thing was, in all the examples, your poetry naturally has a musicality to them brought about by the words. So you not only were teaching us, you were challenging us, and I didn't mind the challenge. I liked it. And you were, singing to us. And it was a wonderful example. I hope others felt the same way, but I had a very strong positive reaction to that first poem.
Thanks so much, Roger. And I do want, so one of the great things about having a group of people who are passionate about that, the passion that brings all of us into this group depends upon honesty. And so don't hold back if you have criticisms also, because I'm interested in learning from those. But I'm really pleased with your response, Roger. And I think that singing is really important to me. There's a fashion now among a lot of younger poets against lyricism, and even some theory against lyricism. But I don't buy it. I think lyricism is, they say, even when we read silently, our vocal cords move up and down, that our body, our sensual body responds to language. And that poetry from the beginning was a bodily experience. It was oral, of course, it was recited, and the power of it in that form certainly marked my interest in it from the beginning.
Would you call that style or movement among young poets, for example, you think of that like discordant music in, the change from classical to jazz and that discordant period? Some people love that dissonance, but I wouldn't say it was, everlasting. And I think that might be what's happening. It's great to hear words that don't go together and are jarring, but we tend to not enjoy that music.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah. I think also it's, writing has fashions, and part of the, the young writers now growing up where poetry is already sort of partaking of it's becoming like fiction and stuff. They don't have to really learn about the techniques involved in line break that make that music. They can do something else. And that something else is valuable too. I think that, any way you can skin the cat, you skin the cat. But for me, the body's involvement has to do with singing. I was friends with Jack Gilbert, a poet that I really loved, and talked to him about music once. And he said that, this is in relation to what you just said about discordance, Roger. He said whenever he felt his poem getting too musical, he put in a note of discord to break it, so it wouldn't be too sensuous, that there would be these, these things that caught you, and that it wasn't just pure mellifluousness. And I know what, you know what that is too. Yeah.
Well, I think you did that with the knowledge that I had about mites not having an anus. So that was a nice little transition there.
And those poor mites, I know.
Carl.
They're very angry mites.
Carl, do you have a question?
Yes. Forrest, I have a question. How do you feel about poetry as a medium for basically connecting and communicating other worlds? Because what you're talking about is not worlds that are necessarily accessible to everyone. And bringing that science to people through poetry, do you see it as a medium that can successfully do that?
Yeah, I think, I think what we can do here on Earth in our little lives is to become as fully human as possible. We want to take in as many worlds as we can. And that's also the wonderful thing. Sean was talking about how he tries to encounter the unknown in different ways. And travel can do that. When you go to a different place, you become the stranger. You become the person who isn't familiar with the ways there. And in that self-estrangement, our perceptions are sharpened. We see things and we hear things that we don't normally hear in our own comfortable environments. So I think it's the great experiences that I've had with art have been in hitting that unknown that that ends up sort of expanding what people have been calling the soul for a really long time. I think art can do that.
Ah, God, this is
Marilyn?
Miss Marilyn, and then Amanda. Amanda had her hand up.
Oh, there, and Pamela.
You up?
Excuse me.
I got you.
I'm okay now? Okay.
Yep.
So I just want to comment on one of your earlier thoughts here about one may not have an immediate response, especially in your case with using, for me at least, a lot of scientific language at the beginning of your poem. But the fact that you gave us permission in a way, and I can really relate to this, to cogitate on it, to think about it, to absorb it, and begin to have something, some feelings and thoughts about what this new world that we're entering is about. I really like that. The fact when I'm writing, I often think about, I enjoy sort of chewing on the language and chewing on the ideas, rather than just writing pages and pages. And that's just something that I tend to favor. So It feels like that is your thought is very compatible with, in some ways, with my approach to writing.
And I love what you're saying, Marilyn, because I mean, another way of saying what you're saying is that poetry can be something to think with.
Yeah. Thank you for saying it so succinctly.
Miss Amanda.
Hi, Forrest. Thank you so much. I want to riff a little bit on what you're asking and also what people are saying to you, but I certainly am hearing the musicality in the scientific language. It also permits you to be transgressive. We go to sex in a different way, so happily and playfully, and what is that word? And yeah, I mean, I'm just right in there with all of that. And it's hard to be fresh and visceral about it. So that's what I'm receiving. I really, really am helped by the fact that you're reading this particular poetry out loud. I think this is a poetry that I want to see on the page, but I like getting it through the ear because you slow me up and I stop listening or reading for narrative and I start listening and reading more like a musical piece, less like a story. And I would welcome, and also all of the framing you did. First of all, I can see you. I see the garden behind you. That's what science is like, right? When you go out for the lichen, you have the whole world there with you. And I don't know why we segregate. We put poetry into silent boxes alone on shelves with nobody there. So I hope when it comes out in the world, it can be multivalent like you are.
Me too. I hope that the word that you used, Amanda, visceral, is really signal to me as a poet. If art doesn't engage my body, my muscles, my pulse, my temperature, then it's not the art that lasts for me. I really want to have that visceral reaction. I'm so glad you used that word.
May I butt in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Pam Singer also had her hand up, and then there's one other question in the text. So I'm doing what I can to make sure I don't miss anybody. Go ahead. Was that you, Fran?
Yes, I thought you were putting somebody else in.
No, go for it, and then we'll go to
what
you,
I
Pam,
wanted to
okay?
say is I so appreciate the integration of science with poetry. I too am, my undergraduate degree is in science, and it gave me a way of looking at the world that I would never have had I not had the scientific background. And it has stood me in good stead. I've done a lot of curriculum writing for kids, and they always include sections on science and poetry, merge. How do we bring science and poetry? You know, it's not a matter of bringing them together, it's a matter of using science in our poetry, which is what you're doing. You're fantastic. I love what you're doing in your way. You're 50 years ahead of me as far as lifetimes go. And so I have not gotten into eco-poetics as you have, but I would have if I were your age.
Yeah.
Fascinating, and I love what you're doing. And actually my last major poem, had a sea anemone, and it wasn't a lichen, but it was a sea anemone.
Is that right? That's great.
So, it's something that I really believe can be part of how we look at the world, not just separating art and science. Has never been, even when I was teaching high school, that's what we used Bronowski on how to integrate science and humanity. And it was it's very, very exciting. And my students are carrying on. If I was thinking as you read of Robert Duncan, who read like this.
Yeah.
And I have a student who was sort of an acolyte of Robert's, and he too reads like this. And when he reads at my book launches, people get very upset. They say, what is he doing? Well, he's viscerally reading his poetry.
Yeah. If you were in my room with me, Fran, you'd see right on this wall over here, a big picture of a photograph of Robert Duncan.
Oh, really? Oh, he's one of my loves. Yeah, we were good friends.
Oh, we'll talk sometime. So the thing that you say about poetry and science has been really interesting to me too. And interesting that Roger and Fran and I, and probably maybe more of you have science backgrounds. Yeah. But in the 19th, all the way into the 19th century, science and literature were considered taking very different trajectories. That literature had all this uncertainty in it. It wasn't just about saying this is this, and that science was about saying this is this. X equals 2y plus 4. But in the 20th century, and certainly now in the 21st century, with the uncertainty principle, with particle physics, we've realized that science is also all about uncertainty. Absolutely. And that it and poetry share quite a lot.
Wonderful.
Fascinating stuff.
Gosh, we could probably sit here till 6 o'clock tonight, but we've got 2 people with their hands raised and 1 comment in the chat and somebody else. So we're going to call on Pamela Singer next. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Pamela.
Pam, we can't hear you.
Where'd you go? Can you unmute her, Judy?
I'll get her. Yeah, I got her.
Unmuted.
There you go. Now you can go, Pam.
Okay, thank you. Well, just as an aside, in the early 80s, and this is going to date me for sure, I attended New College of California in San Francisco, and I had the pleasure of being in Robert Duncan's class. So, and boy, did he influence me. But anyway, Forrest, my major question to you is, I'm an Occidental, and I'm like 15 minutes from the ocean, and I go there as much as possible. And I have a lot of poems about nature and the ocean. And I'm wondering if it's antiquated now because they're not really, well, some of them I would call eco poetry, but a lot of them are lyrical and praising nature, animals, and the ocean. So are those antiquated at this point?
Not according to me.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't seen your poems, Pamela,
Right.
but I think focusing on the world outside of the human
Mhm.
uh, is not just an aesthetic choice, which is worthwhile, but it's an ethical choice.
Yes, very
and,
good.
and so I think it can be very important.
Okay.
And the way you do it, matters a lot.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
So I'm so interested. Fran and Pamela both, knew Duncan and were friends. I would love to talk to. I was friends with Creeley, and I always wondered
Oh,
how
really? I love his work.
how
Yeah.
did he and Duncan ever what Creeley never stopped talking, and Duncan never
Never
stopped.
stopped talking.
Oh, that's interesting.
I spent a whole weekend with Robert Duncan and Joseph Campbell, if you can believe that.
Oh, no, Fran. Holy cow.
Oh, wow.
And here was mythology of Campbell and the mythology of Duncan, and they
Yeah.
had never met. So they were both nonstop for the whole weekend. It was fabulous.
Mhm.
Incredible.
At a Lamar.
Jennifer, you want to jump in there, Jennifer?
Yes. Hi. My name is Jennifer. I'm also in Petaluma.
Hey,
So,
Jennifer.
hey. I'm also a poet, and so I went to the library. I checked out your book, and I was reading it last night.
Is the library open for checking out books now?
Yes. You have to. It's all online, and then they'll email you or text you when your book's available, and they only have drop off on 2 days a week. So
great.
Yeah.
Curbside.
So yeah, and it's curbside. So yeah, you have to like call in when you arrive at the library. So yeah, but so I was really pleasantly surprised I grew up speaking Spanish, so I was really pleasantly surprised to read some of your poems. Like you integrated, Spanish phrases, Spanish words into your literature. It was really cool to read. That's something that I've done in my own work. So it's like, oh, okay, I seeing it elsewhere. And then I was thinking about what we were talking about. Let's see, considering just, hold on. Let's see. I was reading the poem. It's Evaporación, a border history.
Yeah.
And so going into a different type of landscape, just considering that, and the mix of culture and language, and then thinking about what we were talking about, like protecting the earth. What do you have any thoughts, or what are your thoughts on the traditions of other cultures, especially like perhaps even like the people at the border, how those thoughts, those traditional indigenous traditions, how or if they come in conflict with protecting the earth? Because sometimes like the scientific community can come from a very westernized like point of view that can, I think it can be a little abrasive to people who live in these like indigenous communities, or people who come from these terrains, these areas that maybe are sometimes brushed aside. And, they often have come from a long history of protecting the earth. And so I just wanted to know like what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, no, I think mostly the listening needs to happen in the other direction, that the scientists need to be listening to, the indigenous communities that have so long known more about medicinal plants and have protected plants. And in California, the Native Americans who were using burning as a regular practice so that there weren't these major conflagrations that we have now. It's the listening needs to happen in both directions. And I think mostly us listening to them. And I think that very thing Pamela was talking about nature and how to, sort of the ethics of it. I think that that entanglement that I talked about in the beginning, the entanglement of, you know, trees with mycelium, the entanglement of us with other species, we're also entangled culturally. And, and the more we can account for that, the less bullying we do in the world, the more that we incorporate. I think the incorporation of other languages in English language poetry is not just an aesthetic because it adds textual qualities, but an ethical activity also, that we need to acknowledge that there are other languages and that each different language also comes with a world. One of the poets that I translated, and I talk about this, is a Bolivian poet named Jaime Saenz, Saenz, and he was very influenced by the Aymara, which is the indigenous population of Bolivia. And the Aymara is one of the few cultures ever studied for whom, when they talk about the future, they point over their shoulder or make waving gestures back. When they talk about the past, they point forward. And the word for past in Aymara means front. And the word for future is also the word for back. And in their language, they can't say anything like, it's impossible to say a sentence like, Christopher Columbus discovered America in 1492, because every sentence has to be qualified by whether it was witnessed by what you witnessed it or if you overheard it. And linguists think that maybe their conception of the world being so important about whether you saw it or not, they're going to place behind them the future, which no one can testify to. And in front of them, where they can see things, the past, which can be witnessed, talked about. Those kinds of differences in language, which are also differences of experiencing the world, we don't want those to disappear because English takes over everything.
Yeah, so it does.
Bring those back like viruses into the English language will actually make English a more fuller, wider, you know, a language dies if it doesn't get input from other languages.
God, it's fascinating.
Whoa. Yeah, cool. Thank you. And I also did have a follow-up. Did you so that the poem on the border, did you go to the border and like see the landscape or?
He vivido en México por muchos años y
a huevo.
Sí, he pasado mucho tiempo en la frontera.
Excelente, excelente.
So he was at the border for lots of time, right? My high school Spanish comes back in. So, hey guys, we got, it's 2:12. We have 3 people I would like to be able to get to and still have time for member and board announcements. There was a question in the chat and great questions so far. We have Linda Hartman wanted to know, Forrest, when did you first learn that language had power for you? Pretty broad question.
My mom was a elementary school teacher, and I was raised. My father wasn't around in my life, so I was raised by my mom, an elementary school teacher, and her father was a Swede who was of that generation where people memorized poetry. He would wake up in the morning and have a coffee and stomp around reciting these old 19th century poems. You know, you call me chief and you do well to call him chief, who for 12 long years, you know. So my mom grew up loving poetry and she read poetry to me as a child. And the first poet who really entered my ear was Edgar Allan Poe, who lots of critics now say is a terrible poet. I love Edgar Allan Poe. And that the strong rhythms of his work and the repetition in his work, and that was a singular memory of poetry entering me.
Can I ask another question? I know I've spoken already.
Actually, Pamela, I want to be able, Linda Reed
Okay.
and Deborah Taylor French have not had a chance to ask their questions, and
Okay.
got a minute or so for each of them and a response, and then we should
Okay.
be good. I appreciate it. Linda Reed, please unmute yourself.
Hello, I just wanted to make a comment in that you talked about these connections that poetry makes. And for writers, the more that we use poetry in our writing, the better it is. When we read something that we love a lot, it's because it has cadence, it's because it has rhythm, and because they're using a lot of metaphors, and it's poetry. And the more that we use that in our own writing, the stronger our writing will be. And so thank you very much, Forrest. Really have enjoyed this.
Thanks, Linda. Thanks. So you write in multiple genres?
I've seen everything.
I mostly, yeah, I guess a little bit. Yeah.
Oh,
So
she's being very modest. She writes plays, she writes short stories, poetry, and those paintings.
Oh,
Yeah, just a few things, not
yeah.
much.
She's
okay, but I want
multimedia
to.
artist.
Thank you. So that's all. I know you're short on time.
Thanks, Linda.
Deborah Taylor French. Where are you? I don't
One more
see you.
poem.
Hi.
Sean, do we get one more
She
poem?
is, there's Deborah.
If we have time, yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. I wanted to ask you, Forrest, if you think, I mean, I'm looking back now at my early introduction to poetry, which happened to be Robert Bly, who was at my college when I was a young woman. I never knew poetry could be so well performed. And he also talked a lot about the egocentricness of poetry and people's minds, and that one of the reasons that meditation was so important at the time for all the poets, including himself, is to get out of the ego. And he said, get out of the clumpy body and really have a relationship with the universe. He didn't use universe at the time, but he talked a lot about the plants, even the plants, to be able to sit at the plant and be with the plant and not put our thoughts on the plant, but open up to let the plant enter our lives. So I was just wondering, I was thinking about the scientific method, which is questioning. It seemed like a lot of his questions were, he got an image from nature. He sat there and he meditated, and the question was answered through the poem. I'm just wondering if you're familiar with that.
That's exactly, you know, the source of eco poetry is that experience, is to get out of the ego. And how lucky that you studied with him. And he did that in other ways too, as a translator. He was one of our first poets after Pound who was really interested in bringing translation into America, the voices of people elsewhere. In that magazine he ran, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And his book, News of the Universe.
Yeah, right.
Fabulous.
We love that. Yeah, we use it in our poetry group.
Yeah. I'm on my third copy. Falls apart.
So Forrest, we can't thank you enough. This is, you know, one thing that I just love about our meetings is they've become conversational, and it's almost like hanging around in somebody's living room. I would love to have you read one more poem. We have a couple member announcements. So if we can do the member announcements and close with a poem and then have Marilyn take us out, that's what I would ideally like to do. Because I want to leave with your voice as one of the last voices. But it's important for our members to be able to share their voices. So in terms of board announcements, I do not have any immediately at this time. Roger, do you want to give a quick update as where we stand with membership, and then we'll jump into member announcements?
Our membership is at 227 members. That's 75% of what we had in June, but that's a very good result for branch renewals, particularly this time. We have 21 new members that have joined us in the last 3 months, which again is just exceptional.
Yeah.
Some branches don't have 21 members. And we're having, 8 or 9 new members a month. And anyone who is here with us, there's a lot of people that are from other branches, welcome. But do consider becoming a dual member if you're not already. It's not expensive, and being a dual member means you can publish in our specific club-only events, which you can join a meeting like this for the regular fee because you're a CWC member, but you can't be in our anthologies or our new poetry collection. But you still could join as a dual member and submit to Fran and Les's new volume. And I would really encourage you to consider that. And that's enough for me.
All right. I do have one important announcement that I don't have an exact answer, but some of you are already aware that our longstanding listserv feature will be going away as of December 15th. We do not have an immediate solution yet. There's a handful of board members that are working on a short-term solution. So fear not, Writer's Circle and such who need to be able to communicate. We will have a solution. There may be a brief time where we do not have a communication solution for all members, but we're working on it. I don't think Jeannie Sloan is here, but for those who don't recall, the author launch has been deferred to February. So all that is available online if you want to do that. And I'm also going to put a call out. We will be meeting as a board on Tuesday. And while I have, 70 plus people, almost 60 people here, we are in need of having either a team or an anthology editor. So if you can consider that, we will be reaching out to folks individually. Anthologies are a great way to get published if you're not going to publish your own book. It's the last 3 that we've done have been phenomenal. So are there any other board announcements?
Yes, I have a board announcement. When the Writer's Circle meets on the 27th, we're full, but if somebody wanted to join in, we might have somebody who can't make it. So I encourage you to send me an email. The other thing is November 15th is just around the corner now, and that is the deadline for you to submit your poetry to the poetry anthology for 2021. That is Les Bernstein and Fran Claggett are the editors again this year. And so don't miss it. You can submit up to 5 poems. So get those poems in, okay?
Absolutely. And Cher, I'm going to let you go ahead and share what you need to share. I wanted it to come from you.
Okay, yes. First of all, I have to say I'm so thrilled that we finally have news to celebrate. And I'm sure you all know what I mean by that. So the December Salon, I wanted people to know, is early this year. It's going to be on December 12th on Zoom, of course, starting at 1 o'clock. So Saturday, December 12th, 1 o'clock. And registration will start on the website on November 16th. So join the salon and hear wonderful talent, our wonderful talented Redwood writers read their stuff.
And if somebody wants to take on the salon chair, there's another position. Cher is actually, until we can start meeting in person again, she has asked the board's help, me in particular, to have somebody step into that. It's a wonderful event, although it's not quite the same when you don't get to hug and share and break bread together. So lots of opportunities, lots of new members, lots of new guests. Join the club and have some fun. Judy, did you have your hand up?
No, I'm good. I just would like to remind people, if you do have an announcement, the deadline is, if Chrissy, are you still on, honey, for the newsletter? Yeah, for the
I'm here. I'm not camera ready today, so
that's
I'm
okay.
here.
Why don't you make the announcement about member submissions for the newsletter?
Yes, member submissions are due on the 15th of the month, and I would love to get your announcements in, whether, if you've recently published a book, if you have a reading that's coming up, an event that you'd like to talk about. I mean, you could even give a book review if you can fit it into a short amount, but you know, just a little something that you want to share with the club. Like this is your chance to have a little bit of a spotlight. So you can email me at editor@redwoodwriters.org and I'll put that in the chat.
Awesome. Are there any other board announcements? If not, we will open it up for member announcements because I know that there's a few people that have things going on, but there's 4 screens and I can't keep track of everybody. If you've got something to say, just jump in.
I'll make a very quick one.
Okay.
Mount Diablo invites everybody to our general meeting, which is the 2nd Saturday of every month. I realize that conflicts with your salon in December. However, since this meeting was off, we do have Joan Gelfand coming November 14th, and she's doing plot twists. And she's coming via Zoom from New York City, and it should be a lot of fun. And of course, you come for the member price of $5.
She's fabulous.
I sent the newsletter out so you can distribute it. Whoever received that, the president and editor, I think, received that. So, or you can look, you know, on our website, of course.
Thank you, Linda.
No,
And Kimberly likes to make sure that I don't miss her because she's private messaging me and raising her hand. Kimberly, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know that I private messaged you, but I thought it went out to the public. But anyway, no, I wanted to announce that this Wednesday evening at Napa Valley Writers, we are really proud to feature Linda Loveland Reed there as our speaker, and she's going to be talking about thinking creatively outside the box. And it's just $5 for all of the CWC members, same as here. And we would love to see you there. She is, you know, as most of you know, she's really energetic and knows her stuff. So 7 o'clock, I believe, is the start time for the meeting. So this Wednesday, I don't know what the date is, but this Wednesday.
And if anybody, she spoke at our club, and if anybody didn't get a chance, and I don't know that we had that recording, honestly, one of the best talks that we've had from a tactile craft standpoint. So spend the $5 and show up on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, if I can weigh in real quick, I want to second that because Linda's talk was amazing and I will be there this next Wednesday to see it because I'm so excited about it. So if you can, you should attend.
Yep, me too.
Thank you, everybody.
She did not
Thank
pay
you.
us to say that, by the way.
I really appreciate that. But I have announcement, and that is that I'm starting to teach the art history courses again. And I would like to send out to all of you that I'm going to be teaching one a month for the Sebastopol Center for the Arts, January, February, and March. So I'll send that out.
Perfect.
On the listserv. What are we going to do? What are we going to do without a listserv?
Figure it out.
Don't worry, there are alternatives and we're discussing them.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say, is, Sean, you probably need a historian. I absolutely cannot work Dropbox.
You know what?
I just can't. I can't.
Don't sweat it, Linda. All this stuff is available. You and I can talk outside of the meeting and we'll get something figured out that's not.
Okay.
I'm not a Dropboxer either. I dropped the Dropbox.
I can't do it.
Just
Sorry.
can't do it. Well, we have time. If you guys don't mind hanging out, the meeting room is going to be open for another half an hour. And
Roger De Beers has his hand up.
Roger De Beers has his hand up.
And Marilyn.
And Marilyn. Go for it, Roger. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. You were talking about, the speaker talked about a foreign language, and I am really getting into the foreign language that is not very far from here. And it is fascinating, that these people invented this language or lingo in 1880. And it's most of the words and things they insert into English, mostly about sex and strangers. And they consider people who lived in Philo strangers. And you know how far that is from Boonville.
That's really close, yeah. I
You
bet.
know,
Stay out of that one.
But it's fascinating, this, it was it got really complicated too. And there's about 40 or 50 people who still speak it.
Huh.
So I've been up to Boonville. That's where I got my next murder mystery situated, is in Boonville. And my killer is a bootling speaker.
Awesome, Roger.
That's great. And I can imagine that being incorporated into poetry.
Oh yeah, can you imagine a poem in bootling?
There are these poems by Francois Villon that he wrote in an underworld slang that no one speaks anymore, and so they can't be translated. They're this great poet and this body of work, and no one left that speaks this gangster language from
maybe
from France now.
So Marilyn, I'm going to transfer it over to you. And then if you want to go ahead and close the meeting out with Forrest reading a last poem, but I know you've got an announcement to make about December and then January as well, correct?
Yeah, that's great. I'll be brief. First, I want to do a special thanks to you, Linda Reed, for bringing Forrest Gander to our attention over a year ago. And I'm sure we all agree it's just been a marvelous, marvelous conversation with you, and so much new insights and inspiration. Thank you, Forrest.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Really wonderful. So next month, Saturday, December 19th, I'm really pleased to announce, because I just found this out last night when he confirmed, that Indigo Moore will be with us. And like you, Forrest, he's a notable poet. He's Sacramento's former poet laureate, actually. He's also an author, teacher, and screenwriter who specializes in teaching how to transition from poetry and prose into screenwriting. So that will actually be the theme of his presentation. Yeah. So it's kind of a nice segue, I think, from your presentation today for us in a lot of ways. He also, Indigo Moore also has been teaching in the MFA program in Stone Coast in Maine. So I'll leave it at that, but you'll be finding a lot more information out. And Chrissy, I need to get a hold of you so that we can get something in the newsletter about his presentation, hopefully.
All right, I'll be looking for that.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's all I have right now. And so Forrest, if you'd like to end with another poem, that would be a real special treat for us.
Me too. Thanks. Thanks so much, Linda, Marilyn, Sean, and all of you. And it's been really nice to be in your company and to hear from you. And I hope most of us will have a chance to meet sometime. This thing that you're doing seems so wonderful, like the Redwood Writers, the thing that, like the anthologies. If you want to publish your own book, it's really important that you've published some work elsewhere, like these anthologies. Editors want to see that you've published somewhere else, that this gives you a place for readings, that it gives you this community it's really important. It's what counts. Also, it was mentioned like writing reviews. Those, all that stuff that you do for other people, like writing reviews or translating or starting a reading series, it all comes back to you. It spreads your name around. It will help you with your own work. And it seems like it's all accessible through Redwood Writers. Then I'm going over time. So here's the poem I'll end with. And thank you very much for having me. I'm really grateful.
Thank you. Let's give Forrest a round of applause as he closes this out. Thank you so much.
So this is an extension from that first poem that you heard. This is the second little section. Twice Alive, 2. If that's a mass of black jelly fungi on the rotting pine branch, if that's a thumb-long translucent egg sac pulsating behind the termite queen, If this rising sun through the blinds wakes us together, or will tomorrow, if witch's butter could learn to speak. Long soft sarongs of moss, ensorcel rocks, tree stumps, uplifts of granite and gneiss, pine needles, blackberry brambles, arching up wet and tousled. As we descend the scrub hillside, our breath visible in flighty morning air, we enter the forest of quaking aspen, spongy ground on either side of the path, riffled by creamy edible morels and poisonous false morels, song of moss under our breath. Before you left, you said, don't be so rational. Electronics are rational. And I wondered what change I might make that my next words not be so. Then your telegram of tiny black mosquitoes kept me awake all night on the porch. I could hear big moths before I saw them. When finally I laid down in the huge space your absence left me, the cat pawed my chest while your towel with its sour smell muffled my face. While I'm dogged through the day by quick sniffs of sickness, the sorghum thick snot insists, I too am a fleshy protuberance risen momently from some tangled mycelium. So the dead also speak when I speak. Oh, holy, holy communion. Then the getting tired happened. Then the white flecked brown pigeon flattened itself into the sand. Some force expresses us before we can name it. Fragrance whelms from the incense cedars. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
My goodness, what a treat. And
Yeah.
I seriously, we cannot thank you enough.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So look forward to running into you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks
And
so much. It was great.
Thanks.
if anybody wants to hang out in Forest, you're welcome. Don't feel obligated, but if anybody wants to sit and visit for up to another half an hour, I know Judy has to jump because she's got a class to teach. We will leave the meeting room open so you can commiserate amongst yourselves. And,
Okay.
just the beauty of language that you shared is phenomenal. How you take the time to let every word hang, and the meaning that comes with each word is quite remarkable. So thank you again, Forrest.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, thank
Hope
you
to
so
see you
much.
all. Thank you for
Bye.
having me. What a good company.
Thank you so much.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sean. I think it's so wonderful that you are having this extra time for people to be able to talk with each other. It's really, really, really nice. And saying that, I have to go.
You were the one that wanted to chat. No, I'm just kidding.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
Linda.
Bye. See you Wednesday.
So, there's, I think Robin just left, but there's also, there's a lot of talent in our club and throughout CWC. I think our club had a total of 9 or 10 people accepted into the California Lit Review. So just keep writing. How many people, out of curiosity, are writing for NaNoWriMo this month? I know Roger is. I know my wife is like 25,000 words in. Anybody else? No.
No, but Sean, I'm polishing 2 of my NaNoWriMos, my book 2 and my book 3 in Dog Litter Mystery Series. Both were birthed during NaNoWriMo. And it's interesting. It's really interesting because it's converging with my current thoughts now, how it's going to change because of I did that during that time. And now it's a number of years later. It's very worthwhile to do.
If anyone wants to start NaNoWriMo, there's still time to do that. It's never too late. I started on the 15th and finished my first book 18 years ago.
Wow.
But if you want to join, Sean and Chrissy and I and a number of other Redwood writers are buddies. And so if you do participate or are, make sure you try to search for one of us, Roger Lubeck, because I don't use a username other than my own. But definitely just ask to be a buddy, because it's fun to share what we're doing. And I have a small group that's doing a weekly Zoom where we talk about nano.
Roger,
I'd be very interested in doing that then.
Well, Roger, I've invited you to join, but you didn't accept.
Well, invite me again, will you? I have been, with all the, my eye operation that failed, and now I got to do it again.
Roger, just go back on your Nano account. It's there in your Nano account. Go back into NaNoWriMo.
Okay, I'll do that.
Start cranking out some bootlinging, Roger.
Yeah.
If I
Go
could
ahead,
just
Linda.
say real.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say real quick, I've never done NaNoWriMo. I don't write novels, but a big misconception is that it's novel writing based. But I know a lot of people who will just aim for writing the 50,000 words during the month, no matter what it is. One guy used the time to actually develop his novel, and he wrote, 50,000 in character development, plot development, that sort of thing. And a lot of people, will write, if they're an essay writer or a poet, or, they just set themselves a goal. So it's not always about, it doesn't have to be about novel writing. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and to that case in point, I have a book that I need to edit, and I'm using that time to do some journal entries and just free form thoughts. But this year, unlike previous years, I'm not hung up on it. The magic number to hit 50,000 is 1,667 words a day. And if you're writing nonfiction like I do mostly, that's not hard. We speak we speak a whole lot more than that in a day. And for Judy can attest to this, she's not here. This little device called a smartphone has a great ear that you can just blab incessantly and then translate that into typo riddled text that counts for NaNoWriMo. Linda, and then I want to hear from Leo, because Leo, I haven't seen you in a while, and I'm sure you got, take the opportunity to give a free plug for Copperfields if you have anything important coming up.
Thank you. Okay, so real quickly, what is the app you use on your smartphone, Sean?
I use the notes. I actually just say, "Hey Siri, take a note." We're talking.
Okay, thank you. That sounds easy. Okay.
There's also voice recorder and several others, but that, if you have an iPhone, that works really well for me.
And it just records it. That's so cool. Okay. So I have a member who's looking for a NaNoWriMo group, and I don't believe that we have one going in our club. Would you be open to an outside member if she has?
Absolutely. Ask Chrissy. Chrissy and Roger have a Sonoma County group set up. I don't know how they do that, but
It's on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, I set one up last year, and
I set up a separate group in NaNoWriMo. But Linda, what county are they in?
This particular woman goes back and forth between Mount Diablo and Virginia, the state of Virginia.
Because every region in America has a NaNoWriMo club.
I sent her that paper. I sent her those links to look at.
We'd welcome her joining as a buddy, and just because it'll give her a community to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And so she should go on Facebook to look.
Well, she can go on Chrissy's Facebook page, the Sonoma NaNoWriMo, or she can go into NaNoWriMo and search on one of our names.
Okay.
Like my name, Roger C. Lubeck, and then ask to be a buddy. Because that way she can connect with the others.
Okay, I'll just check in with her and see how she's doing with it. And then if she's still struggling, I may throw her that phone. Thank you very much.
There you go, Linda. Chrissy beat me to it. I was going to grab, if you want to copy and paste a link to the Facebook NaNoWriMo group she created, it's there.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's very generous of you.
So what's Leo got to say?
Okay.
I don't know. Does Leo have anything to say?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks, Sean. Thank you for putting me on the spot. I have just a few books that I like to refer to. Things that I've been working on that I've published. One actually is with Roger, that is right here. We republished his book, Murder Under White, which was before published as Murder is Forever. So this would be our 3rd edition, and we're working with him to publish his books, his short stories as ebooks, and then his compendium that is a book, The Boy with a Broken Smile, will be publishing by the end of the year before the holidays, hopefully. You were mentioning also about Copperfield. So right now, because of COVID, we are not taking consignments from any independent authors. So we are just having to take things through Ingram. And then I'll jump to the second plug that I'm doing. This is for another of our Redwood Writers, local author, Kim McGrath. She's also a member, and her book is My Year on the Road. So we're publishing this both through Amazon and through Ingram. So now if you want to be into local bookstores, since we're not taking consignment, you have to go through Ingram, make it non-returnable, so that way we can plug it to the buyers and they can actually have it on our stores. And since those are like local authors, I mean, it's also a good chance for us to carry it and promote it in our local display. And the third plug that I want to do is for another book that I just helped publish. It's a book, about the election. So it's another local amateur illustrator, and she made this book about the election, everything that is going on in the last 4 years. It's called "Is It a Hoax, or Is It Cheeto and His Swamp Creatures?" And that is a book of illustrations and her own personal thoughts about like everything that is been going on for the past 4 years.
Sorry, could you repeat the writer's name?
Her name is Janet E. Levy. So
Janet E. Lee.
E. Levy.
Spell the last name for me, please.
Levy.
Levy.
Yeah. I don't know if she actually joined the Redwood Writers. I asked her that it would be like a good thing if she joined. She said she was going to check it out. So hopefully we'll have her as a member also.
Thank you.
Right. And this one also, since it's hardcover, we'll have to publish it through Ingram to be able to make it available through both stores.
Thank you, Leo.
That's it. And if you guys have any questions about Copperfield and how we can help authors, we're always
I have a question
for your questions.
When I was working with a quote unquote, vanity publisher trying to get my book out because I needed some support and I didn't want to hire 3 different people to do it. They wanted to charge me $800 to get my book on Ingram Sparks. Does it cost to get your book on Ingram? And how, do you know?
The cost that Ingram has is just for managing their files, like when you upload their files and they have to process the files, they have a one-time charge of $50, $49.
Wow, I'm glad I didn't go scam.
That's it. Yeah, and I can, like anybody that is interested, I can kind of let you know what to do so you can actually will be able to publish through Ingram and make it available to bookstores. The thing that you are probably going to do or want to be able to do is to buy your own ISBN.
Yes.
Where you will have control of the copyright and be able to publish it both Ingram and Amazon. Yeah, so those will be like basically the 2 things that it will do.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, Pamela.
Does anyone remember the name of the indigenous people that Forrest talked about who, do the future past this way and the future that way? No?
I'll look it up, Linda.
I'd
or Pamela.
appreciate that. Yeah.
I want to plug Leo. He is really nice to work with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He's
Yeah, Leo's an all right
he's
guy.
one of the good guys.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to go, Sean. So bye, everybody. It was a great meeting.
Bye, Roger.
Great meeting. Thanks
Bye,
for
Roger.
everything, Roger. And
Bye.
Pamela, I am
Yeah.
putting this in the chat right now.
Oh, thank you.
It is Aymara and the Quechua.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
Mara and Quechua. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Google makes everybody look smart.
Quechua.
Sean, I have one thing I'd like to say.
You're past your allotment, Deborah. I'm sorry. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I met someone on Instagram, an indie author, and her name is Terry Case. And we traded novels and we gave each other reviews on Instagram. And then she sort of became a friend and she sent me an offer. So now I have my first chapter in her first anthology called New Beginnings. She gathered about 36 writers, and several people, such as herself, have 2 chapters in there, but it's 95% new first chapters, so people can find a new writer. It's free as an ebook, and I posted it on my Facebook and on my Instagram so people could find the link. But you can download it for free at BookFunnel. Evidently, they hold your hand. If you have any trouble, they will send you an email link and make sure that you get your book for free. And there are a couple of short stories in there too. I wanted to announce it earlier, but I wasn't together like Linda Reed, who's so organized.
BookFunnel?
It's called BookFunnel, yeah. But if you see my link on Facebook, or I can send everybody the link on we still have the listserv, I could try that. And
yeah, go ahead, send that.
I haven't worked on that in a long time, so I can try to do that. But I'd be
Listen, I love email.
Terry's really a good writer, and she's a great designer too. She gets books that are really, high quality, good to read.
Yeah, send it on out to me anyway.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Kitty, go ahead and unmute yourself. We're almost wrapping up, but welcome. I don't even know you, so hello.
Hello, I'm down in Marin, so I don't show up very much.
It's all right.
I'm sorry, I missed Forrest Gander. Is he going to be replayed at some point?
We recorded it, and if I don't, knock on wood, mess it up, because my right arm and Judy Baker is not here, she will send out a link probably within 4 or 5 days.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Who makes the contact to get writers or get guests to speak?
That's Marilyn Lanier does that, and she's got a whole team of, I don't know, 5 or 6 people that get together once a year, and as a board we talk about slots that are still open and discuss trying to bring you guys new and different speakers, so we're not having the same type of talk about craft or marketing or publishing each and every month. So this next speaker is part of what we wanted was to bring somebody who had experience with screenwriting into the fold. So it's a nice transition between Forrest and, because he's also a poet, he's an African-American speaker and author, and it's just, we're delighted. So does that answer your question, Roger?
Yeah. Do they get a stipend?
Every speaker gets a stipend, yes.
Oh, is it a sliding scale or just?
It's, for the most part, it's $100 per event.
Okay.
With a few exceptions, yes.
Okay, because I want to renew I'm from, I lived in New England for quite a while, and I used to hang out at Kate's Mystery Books in Cambridge, and there's a couple of people that thinking about renewing my connection here from the West Coast to the East Coast.
Well, I'll tell you this, it's on our list to get somebody who specializes in mystery and or crime, and if they've got some notable experience, send it over directly to Marilyn at speakers@redwoodwriters.org, because we have 2 or 3 more spots to fill next year.
Okay, if I can get him off his Harley hog, I'll see what I can do.
All right.
Are there particular genres or areas of interest for speakers that you're looking to fill?
Screenwriting was one. We had, God, I'm trying to go off the top of my head, mystery and crime. And then I did a survey, Kitty, that because I was really curious as what the membership wanted. And there are a lot of our membership that want more specific talks or workshops on the craft as it relates to narrative arc, dialogue, character development, things of that nature. So those are some of the things that we have in mind based on what members really want. But you guys have somebody, Mike mentioned a speaker coming up at the end of the month, and I don't remember who it is. Do you know who that is from Marin? No? Okay. Deborah, you're muted again.
Unmute. Okay.
Have you had C.S. Lakin?
No, but she's dynamite. I had her slated to speak at the conference, and part of why we didn't yet have her was because we weren't sure if we were going to do it at the conference. So
She has spoken to Redwood in the past, though, a
Has
few
she?
times.
Okay. I was just going to say for narrative arc, I think she's pretty good for a workshop.
that's what her talk was going to be on.
Yeah, she does a good job. She does this like 10 pillars, and she's good for, I would say she's good for a workshop. Kimberly, you think so?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you think she's good for a workshop on narrative arc?
How many people do we have on here? I'm not a fan of hers, to be honest, but that's just me. And everybody that I've spoken with after one of her talks, people do respond to her very well, and she's certainly popular. So yeah, I mean, she would be a good get for you guys. She tends to bring an audience, and like I said, a lot of people get more out of it apparently than I do. I've heard I've sat through some of her workshops. It's been a while, but people do respond. So
yeah.
And just for the 15 people that are still here, Judy and Marilyn and I and some others on the board are going to be putting together. It probably won't happen until author launch, but March forward, we're going to start rolling out some workshops on a monthly basis that are available to our members or the entire CWC membership. 1 hour to 1.5 hour workshops at most. Some may even be 45 minutes because our Zoom fatigue kind of goes up exponentially if we're on it too long. So
Well, that's very cool. Nice
And-
idea.
I'm going to go ahead and, is there anybody else that has some kind of burning desire or wants to share it? Because it's almost 3 and I've got some other things to attend to. And if I leave, the meeting ends. So
Yeah, no, but thank you for having me. This was awesome.
I'm glad
Really
you made
enjoyed
it, Linda.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've got a family workshop or Zoom.
Thanks,
rather.
everybody.
Yep. We'll see you guys next month.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
All right. Goodbye.
And congratulations to all.
Bye, Sean.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.